Very good afternoon or very good morning in Latin America. When the world started to recover from the effects of the COVID-19, it's had to face the serious consequences caused by the war aggression against Ukraine. And in Latin America, we did not escape this global context, which is a real challenge. And this generates more complexity in the world economy, which were already impacted by the vulnerability of the value chain and the high prices of transport. The plans for growth in Latin America for 2022 were adjusted to the lower between 1.8 and 2.4%, even though we acknowledge the features and the risks, especially faced by each economy. All are faced to external challenges that make inflation more risky and increases financial costs. Even though the international price of raw materials, it favors some economies, the price of energy and food is already reflected in our economies throughout the region. Therefore, it requires immediate measures to mitigate the social economical effects that can be foreseen so that we avoid a new threat over the whole food security that would affect the most vulnerable groups and communities, and that could raise more new social tensions. But it also offers opportunities, a vast deposit of natural resources, the environmental agenda, the increase of tourism, creativity with new models of business which are so important. A financial flux and investments in our region are a few of the topics that we will discuss this afternoon. And we have the honor to have the President Iván Duque from Colombia, the President Luis Abinader from the Republican Dominican, the Vice President, First Minister of Inclusion and Social Development of Peru, Dina Boluarte, and the President of Costa Rica, Don Rodrigo Chavez. Welcome to you all. I would like to ask you, President Duque, before anything, first of all, I would like to thank you for being with us again in Davos. This is the 4th year of your mandate, and you have probably accumulated a great deal of experience with a lot of success and an ambitious agenda that we have been honored to collaborate with. But you must have served also a great challenge due to the COVID crisis, with the consequences in terms of health and social and economic repercussions, as well as political repercussions as well. So which are the main lessons learned by Colombia and also Latin America with regards to building resilience and preparing for new risks? Well, first of all, thank you very much, Marisol. It's a pleasure to be again here in Davos, and thank you for not just moderating this panel, but for being always there with our region. Also, hello to President Abinader, Vice President Abina Boluarte, Abina, and Dina, and President Chavez. It's a pleasure to be with all you. First of all, when I was a candidate to the presidential election, I was asked, what is your favorite word? I said resilience, and the journalist asked me, "Resil what?" It seemed like it was an unconventional word, but today we all use this word. For me, the definition of resilience means to turn adversity into an opportunity, and it was very hard for us because the economy was raising above the world average and the Latin America average. We had for the first time in 8 years this great success, and then came COVID. That was in 2019, sorry. And we had two opportunities, either to linger in the crisis or turn it into an opportunity. Of course, the effects of the pandemic were very hard, but if I'm asked to show some indicators that show Colombia's resilience, I would point out several. The first one, we we raised 10.6%. We grew 10.6%, and this year we grew 8.5 points, which is the best quarter ever seen by Colombia in the last 10 years. And also multidimensional poverty. And once you've measured all the different factors in Colombia in 2021 was the least one since we measure multidimensional poverty. Then third factor was the labor vulnerability. The last measure by the Statistics Institute of Colombia showed that in labor informality has gone down in Colombia a lot. So we've also other things appeared. The most important time where housings were bought. We reached to transform the energetic matrix in the middle of pandemics, going from 28 megawatt of new renewable to 2,800 this year, and the greatest investment in infrastructures so that in August we will have inaugurated the same number of kilometers than in the last 25 years in Colombia. So this is resilience. Now come the challenges. And as we were discussing with President Abinader, whom I appreciate very much, about the risks that we see. Well, for the world, we've heard about food security. In our country, there's still a lot of agricultural frontier. We have 20 million potential, and we only operate in 9 million. And also we have energy. We have oil, gas, carbon, and we also have non-conventional renewable that will help us go into green hydrogen and other fuels. And then thirdly, now we hear about nearshoring, friendshoring. We hear about our countries could be new industry settings, thinking about North American countries. So I cover the definition of resilience, the result, and the future potential of resilience. And let me ask you one thing. You mentioned informality, and this affects us all in Latin America. Could you mention just one strategy, the most successful one to transform informality into formality? What would it be? Well, first of all, we need more pro-company government. I was a candidate and said that I would lower taxes for companies. I wasn't very popular, but then we got good results. We could deduct 50% of local taxes, and we eliminated tax that enable to create more investment, and it also helps creating employment. And in the middle of the pandemic, when the unemployment was growing, we decided to subsidize 25% of the minimum wage to any employment for youth between 18 and 28 years old. And 400,000 employments were created, and this has helped us reducing labor informality. Thank you, President. These figures reveal a lot. I had the opportunity to be with President Abinader not long ago in Santo Domingo, and President Abinader, I would like to know how you faced the effects of pandemics and the disruption of value chains, and now the war and the inflation. Thank you, Marisol. We've just been at a WHO meeting, and like here, one of the greatest events that has taken place since the last 2 years. And the Secretary General has showed us about the way the pandemics worked. We are a touristic country, unlike the rest of Latin American countries, and with the exception of the small Caribbean states. And we have here our friend Rodrigo Chavez, who whose country has also great tourism, but 16%, between 16 and 18% of our GDP comes from tourism, and 20% of employment also depends on tourism. So guess what the sector what the most affected sector was by pandemic. It was tourism. That's why when we reached government and during the highest point of pandemic, before I got in charge, I was told by the president, by the Minister of Health, that the health system was collapsed, and we were able to double the number of emergency room beds, thanks to organizing logistics and also together with the private sector, because we couldn't buy directly vaccines because they were being researched. So the private sector made the first investment so that we could buy vaccines and so that we could register in the end list. But as you know, as in any other country, there were a few problems around this. But first, and also we started opening tourism and hotels that were closed by 90%. And I'll tell you what it means for employment. People told us that it was crazy to incentivize tourism. But in 2020, between 2020 and 2021, 20% of the hotels were able to open. So there was 50% more employments. And we obviously found out that if we did not recover tourism, we could not recover the Dominican economy. And to recover tourism, we had to recover health. And we succeeded to get vaccines, and I remember that we got the same day the vaccine in Colombia and the Republican Dominican. We started vaccinating intensely throughout the country. We vaccinated the hotel workers as well, and we reached the main point, which was to open the economy and keep the health at the same time. And today, our lethal level is the least of the world, 0.7. In the CDC, by the CDC, we're in risk 1, just like the US, and we were able to open completely the economy. And that's why we were the country that better recovered worldwide with regards to tourism, as the OIT let us know. And it is true that today we have eliminated, we only have 10% of COVID infrastructure. We have recovered at best level in the Latin American economy. We were the ones that grew most in Latin America. We grew 12.3%. And, just wait for me, I know, but don't sing victory yet. You'll see. In the first quarter, we grew 6.1%, and we will continue with the same level in the following quarters. So the nearshoring, the friendshoring, we grew over 34%, and as far as exports, traditional exports have also increased from our side. So of course, you see that tourism has recovered, but in any economic area, we have recovered, and even better. And even in agriculture, even though we're an island, our agricultural sector is quite powerful, but it was well affected because unlike other Latin American countries, we don't have oil. We import any raw materials, soy, maize, for instance, poultry production. Producers say, we don't produce poultry, we assemble poultry. And yes, it's true. It's because of the reality we have in our island. But we have identified priorities, and this has helped us a lot. And with regards to inflation, and I will conclude by that, Marisol, we've had to combine a special funding. We doubled the capacity for funding in the agricultural sector. That's why for the first time in 20 years, we haven't had to import rice. It was the first time that we overproduced bananas. I mean, we're talking about the produces most consumed by Latin America, by Dominicans, and also poultry. And we increased the funding of production. And also, after war, raw materials have increased, and we've had to do subsidies. The price of the oil stayed at 85, and from now on, I told the country that from 85 to 115, based on our calculations, we could keep our subsidies. Now you know that it's 110. It's a double that where it was. But today, in 2 hours, the Minister of Industry and Commerce will announce the subsidy to maize so that the price of poultry doesn't rise. And also, we have announced that we will subsidize wheat. And also last year we started subsidizing fertilizers. So because the price has increased so much that we had to create a line of subsidies. And our fiscal administration has been as efficient as possible. And it's true that we feel very proud. And we're doing it very transparently. We're constantly fighting corruption so that such resources are profitable. And last year, the deficit was less. And this year, due to this situation, and we've already announced it to multilateral bodies, we will have to increase deficit with regards to what was planned last year. What I can tell you, Marisol, is that this should be a day-to-day administration because we need to adapt to the change of prices, and we can't foresee in long term. And long term, I'm talking 3 months. Every week we meet with the economy committee, with the agricultural committee, with the health committee, so that we can determine the actions required. Congratulations, President. This is good. Yes, we are in a very fluid world with external factors that are quite complicated. And I would like to now ask Vice President Boluarte. Peru was a country that had the highest economic recovery figures in 2021. We're talking about 13.1%. But what is the vision and the strategy of your government to reinforce governability, governance, confidence, trust, and to work with the private sector to promote more investment and therefore to develop employment? Thank you, Marisol. First of all, I would like to thank on behalf of Peru each of the participants to this World Forum, the World Economic Forum, where countries will present what we live every day in our societies. In your question, Marisol, I would first like to open the market, not just to focus on Peru, but to speak about Latin America. In Latin America, we need to think that the human being is at the center of social development, and we have to have in mind several important factors. First of all, we need to place, as I say, the individual as the main center of the economic development. Secondly, the state needs to set priorities, which are health, education, and safety and security. And thirdly, the private sector must have a relevant role where it may develop a virtual circle where we can grow. And I'm talking about businesses and our communities, our societies. In Peru, in that sense, we consider that labor informality has to change, and we need to formalize it. And how can we succeed? in that? Well, we need to simplify red tapes, and it has to be in a short time so that we can eliminate bureaucratic requirements which damage employment growth. But all these processes need to be digitalized. So we simplify administration so that we simplify red tape and any process. And this will give us a more efficient government, and that will help us grow economically. But in Peru, in order to ensure the economy in 2021, we grew 13.5%. And this economic growth was the greatest among the region. And President from Colombia has said they've grown 13%. And we have grown 3%. And in spite of the pandemic, in spite of the fact that last year we formed our government, we managed the economy of the country in a responsible way. And in 2021, we grew 13.5 points. And in this first quarter, unlike last year, we have already grown 3.8% with comparison to the first quarter of last year. Consequently, Peru is a country which is responsible of a stable economy management. And this enables businessmen to invest because we guarantee a responsible legal support. Therefore, investors may invest in a safe way, and also with clear rules where the businessman and the investors will go together and taking care of our environment, which is so damaged. We've been, all of us presidents have been sharing lunch, and we've all heard that if all leaders don't just, and not just the Latin American leaders, but world leaders, if we don't do something to take care of our planet, we will put in risk not just food, which keeps us alive, but the survival of human being on the planet Earth. So we invite all of you investors to visit Peru to invest, because you may be sure that we will welcome you with a stable economy, with a legal guarantee, so that you and we as a Peruvian society may develop jointly. Thank you, Marisol. Thank you, Vice President. Thank you very much. President Chavez, this is the first international trip that you take as the President of Costa Rica. We value your presence very much. Costa Rica is known for being a stable, safe, secure country with a lot of social equality. And you avoided this great wave of the pandemics, but you're still facing some emerging challenges, and you will have to go through a complex period in your presidency. We've heard that your corruption is at the center of your concerns in your mandate. So could you tell us a bit more about your mandate in Costa Rica? Thank you very much, Marisol. Thank you for the President of Colombia, of Dominican Republic, and the Vice President of Peru. No, I didn't avoid anything. On the contrary, I am the heir of what needs to be corrected, because unlike the experiences of my colleagues, Costa Rica didn't do it really well, and to the contrary, we have deteriorated quite a lot. In spite of the fact that Costa Rica is still a democracy, Costa Rica is a country that will maintain its democratic values of respect for human rights, women empowerment, respect for minorities, and an absolute commitment unbreakable commitment, I should say, with the environment and with private property. Therefore, I cannot report the successes of my 2 weeks as the president of Costa Rica, but I am able to tell you about the challenges we are going to face. First of all, to keep this social cohesion, this peace that we've enjoyed, not just in Costa Rica, but we are a magnet for people from other countries that look for a better life in Costa Rica. And this is not cheap. This is more pressure on us. And we do it with our open heart. But this is a pressure. This means that it's a pressure for social services and our fiscal departments. So we need to, first of all, develop more and better employment. And this goes through giving more trust to the private sector. In Costa Rica, the dichotomy we have, the fake dichotomy we have been living for years, private sector or public sector, shouldn't be. There was no country worldwide that succeeded prosperity only with the private sector or only with the public sector. These are two fingers of the same hand. So we need to have a vibrant private sector that doesn't corrupt and a public sector that is not corrupted. And this is what we want to do. And we've already presented laws like, and we've incentivized people who denounce corruptions, etc. So we need to improve our fiscal situation. We cannot build, and as President Duque mentioned, housings with interest rates of 12% in dollars. This is too expensive and very dangerous for the one who will pay the mortgage and for the financiers. So we have spoken with many investors today, and we've told them not red tape, red carpet. Costa Rica is open for business, and I will break all bottlenecks. I will break all chains, and we will open our doors. Come and invest in Costa Rica. You will find a renewed ambience, always with social responsibility, definitely. We've lost also the distribution of income, because Costa Rica was the country that was the most egalitarian concerning income distribution, together with Uruguay, but it hasn't worked and it's deteriorated. Why? Because our fiscal system, instead of improving the distribution of income, has worsened it. The quality of public services, and this is a commitment that we have in Costa Rica. We can discuss whether it's the distribution of income is good or bad, if it goes against incentives, etc. But what we agree on 100% throughout Costa Rica is that the equal opportunities is not to be discussed, and the state should give good opportunities through human capital, by education, through education, health, and public security. And then there's the quality of public services. Each time we do a PISA test, and this is, if we've been a year in the OCDE, and we celebrate it tomorrow, actually. So we've already an OCDE country, but each time we take a PISA test, our ranking goes down. And when we spend almost 8% of the GDP in education, and Vietnam is number 7 in the world in mathematics, and they only spend 4% of the GDP in education, and we're 54 or something, and we spend double. And we don't even compare with Finland. We don't compare with Korea. We compare ourselves with Korea or Vietnam. So the agenda is quite challenging. And we've had a lot of fiscal disorder, and the exchange rates and therefore the Costa Rica are net importers of energy, so we suffer from the invasion of Russia in Ukraine by Russia, and we import wheat. And as the President Abinader said, this is what we maize or so we use for protein. So we will have to adapt our economy to the international to change in international trade. And I am extending myself, but I will end here. The reality of things is as follows. All changes in public policies and all structural changes generate winners and losers. The challenge of our government is to make sure that winners are the majority of Costa Rica people. And who will be the losers? The ones who benefited from public policies for years due to private monopolies. In Costa Rica, there are private monopolies. The state has given businessmen a monopoly, saying you can only import some medicines, etc. This is ending. And we're working very hard on this. So we want to generate changes that will make a lot of winners, and where losers will have to acknowledge the fact that they benefited illegitimately from the state. So this is our challenges from the state of things that we got until 5 years' time, when we want to hand the country, and we hope much better organized. So, well, thank you very much, dear President Chavez, and I already invite you to the World Economic Forum to come next year, and you will be able to then tell us the result of the agenda that you have implemented, that you will have been implementing by then. Now, President Abinader, in our region, there's a lot of development aspects or possibilities. One of them is tourism. We've also heard the concerns about the deterioration of our environment. With this executive innovative capacity, what do you propose for the Latin American region and I'm talking about some specific measures to develop ecotourism? It's an area where Costa Rica was very relevant. Yes, Marisol. I would like to get back to the previous point you mentioned. Our preparation. We prepared with subsidies. But when after a month we got to the government, we started giving a general medical insurance through the public health system to 2.4 million Dominicans that still didn't have it. So now 98% of the Dominicans have a basic medical insurance, and this helped a lot with the health recovery. And we doubled the amount of directly economic. We raised the subsidies we give to mothers and fathers who are in vulnerable situations. We gave 800 subsidies to 800,000 individuals, and now we're giving to 1.6 million individuals, and we've doubled the subsidy given to these individuals. And distribution and social justice are what should be the objective of any economic policy, which is to reduce the levels of poverty. The Dominican Republic has a different matrix of currency distribution, and it's very important for us. Concerning the generation of currencies, there's tourism, the French areas, and also the money sent by immigrants, and all Latin American countries get that. But we also know here that currencies are very good to impulse construction and building, much more than one may think. So the French area, the French shoring, the tax-free area, tax-free zone, enabled companies to open themselves. For instance, in our tax-free zones, we have $1 billion of technical devices, apart from the tax-free zones that make textile and clothes, etc. And they also develop technologies there. Now, getting back to tourism, I think that Latin America is very diverse, and therefore its tourism should be diverse as well. We have tourism of sun and beach. It's massive. It's the most important. But we also combine it with ecological tourism, green tourism in relevant areas that we have natural reserves and reservations, and we also enable special visits. And there's also historical visits, because you remember that Santo Domingo was the first city built in Latin America. So we have the buildings of the Spanish town then, and we are reconstructing and refurbishing all our historical monuments. Yesterday, in one panel on tourism, the Minister of Tourism of Arabia Saudi said that they are creating new touristic destinations throughout the pandemics, and we did the same. We created a type of tourism which is another type of tourism which is more greener, and it will be oriented towards ecotourism.
We have a province where 78% of the territory is a national park, and this is going to be located in one part of the province to be able to access all this protected area with a less dense tourism. It will not be mass tourism like it is in Punta Cana. So each country, for instance, the case of Costa Rica, it has developed its ecotourism, okay? But Colombia has all the possibilities. It has Cartagena, which is a very beautiful colonial city. It can also have ecotourism or beach tourism. Brazil is a whole continent, so it has everything. And I think that each country, being Latin America as diverse as it is, each country needs to identify its tourism. There is a need of tourism. There are lots of possibilities. Of course, sun and beach tourism is massive, but there are also, for instance, ecotourism, cultural tourism, historical tourism. And we need to know, Marisol, that the new generations are perfectly aware of tourism as being as having a very important ecological impact. For instance, my daughters don't go to a restaurant where there is plastic, and they're young people, of course. So they have a high awareness of the importance of ecological matters, and everybody needs to have so. I would like to say something about that. Our countries, and especially in the Caribbean region, we're those which have less polluted the world for centuries, because we haven't had a very important industrial development. But we belong to those, well, to the 10% of countries which are more vulnerable to climate change. We have the enormous problem of sargasso in all Latin America, and when we see the increase of the level of the sea level, we're really vulnerable to global warming. And we need to be aware of that. And the more developed countries need to be aware of that. Ivan and I have been discussing in Costa Rica when President Chavez got to office, we discussed about creating a whole park between Colombia and the Dominican Republic to try and preserve our waters, our seas, against any kind of exploitation that can have a negative impact on us. And we're doing all this jointly. And between the ADD, the Alliance for the Development of Democracy, between Costa Rica and Panama, we're also discussing about the different possibilities and different actions that we can implement together to protect the environment, and to protect our natural resources. Thank you very much, President. And just a last thing, there is a very important act which is now in Congress and which is a priority for me. I have established as a priority that has to do with the use of soils. And we need to know what each area is used for. This one is for mining, this one is for tourism, this one is for agriculture, to prevent non-organized development. And this is of the utmost importance in all of our countries. So you have many things to feel proud about and very optimistic, by the way. You talked about the environment. Costa Rica has developed its environmental awareness long before the rest of Latin America. Which is your view about the environmental agenda and climate change agenda? Well, Costa Rica is a country that will never go back in its commitments and in its will to achieve carbon neutrality and to contribute and to be a good citizen in the among all the nations. Costa Rica is still committed. We need to do several things, though, a bit differently. We have managed to reverse deforestation. I think we're the only tropical country that have managed to do so. We doubled the jungle area in our countries. But what do we still need to do? Well, we need to adapt ourselves to climate change, because climate change has an enormous impact on us all. And we are not investing enough in adaptation measures and to rebuild. Secondly, we have historic challenges in the management of our rivers. Unluckily, we have invested very little in sewage system, and we have a lot of pollution in our rivers, so we're going to work on that. And the management of solids, we're not recycling solid waste, we're not doing circular economy, we're not doing any waste to energy, etc. We're still improving our electricity grid towards more renewable energies, even though we have overinvested in the power generation with fossil fuels. We're going to keep going forward. Times are difficult, so we'll do it as we can, relentlessly, at the rhythm of global conditions, without sacrificing our present well-being in exchange of a better future, but without sacrificing the future for an immediate gain. No, there is an economic rationale and a social well-being that Costa Rica needs to manage correctly, and we're going to do that. Yes, thank you. President, you mentioned net zero, carbon neutrality, and President Duque has positioned in Colombia's agenda many many development engines. You have developed a roadmap for net zero, and you have promoted a strategy of a digital transformation, which is absolutely relevant, and more so in pandemic times where we have seen an acceleration of these capacities and these needs that have appeared during the pandemic. So, President, can you please tell us how you see these two topics and which would be your recommendations for the rest of Latin America? Well, first of all, we have had here very clear interventions on my three colleagues here, and I would like to say that one of the factors that unites Latin America with the rest of the world has to do with the environmental agenda. In the specific case here of Colombia, we're talking about a country that has 50% of its territory in the rainforest. 35% is in the Amazon region, 52% of the deserts of the planet, 900,000 kilometers of territorial waters, and we only emit 0.6% of the global greenhouse emissions. But we're one of the most threatened countries by climate change. So our attitude was we're going to act, and we're going to show an agenda where we commit ourselves to be to get to net zero in 2050, to reduce 51% of our emissions in 2030, but to implement other actions which have an immediate effect, like declaring 30% of the territory as a protected area, and build an agenda on energy transition, circular economy, clean mobility, etc. So what can we show today after 4 years of this policies? We had only 28 megawatts of renewable energies. We had, of course, hydraulic generation, but we multiplied by 100 these energies, and they will be installed this year. So our grid, more than 90% will come from renewable energies, conventional and non-conventional. We said it, we did it. Secondly, we launched an act on clean mobility in Colombia. It's an area where there are lots of emissions, and now our urban transportation fleet is the greenest one, and it's the largest one in the region. It's electrically powered. So we put the public sector in the circular economy, and we now have hundreds of companies working there, and this has been an element that has linked companies with consumers, because consumers want companies to be more responsible. And we made our decisions to accompany this movement, and we sent a clear message to the world. We're not going to wait 2030 to declare 30% of the territory as a protected area. We're going to do it in 2022. And this is placing ourselves in the face of another challenge. If we declare a protected area, we really need to guarantee this protection with the communities. And there have already been 10,000 families that we pay for working in that area. And we also promote a low-carbon breeding, and in areas where that have been affected by deforestation, we're reducing this deforestation thanks to multiple campaigns. And we launched a strategy called Biodiversities, and this is the way to zero net. And I think that this logic, this rational, shows us that there is an environmental competitiveness, and this is something that we have talked about, my three colleagues, even with Dean and President Chavez Robles and President Castillo at the time. And we need to produce better and with a less environmental impact. And Colombia is one of the countries today, one of the countries in the world that has a less carbon footprint compared to its GDP. And this is something which unites all of us in Latin America, all the presidents in Latin America, for friendshoring and nearshoring. But our carbon footprint is much less than other countries. And I finished saying that at the end of the day, in Glasgow last year, I was asked, why do you have these such ambitious goals in Colombia? Well, why not? Because, of course, we only represent 0.6% of global emissions. But if we, the countries that are really victims of the climate change, do not have high ambitions, well, the wealthiest countries, those who have most contributed to this crisis, will not have an example to follow and enough pressure. So I think that this road to net zero needs to be harmonized with growth and with equity. And another two topics. This needs to bring benefits. Access to drinking water has been granted to many families, many more families, and we are reducing 50% of the gap of electrification. We are giving solutions with like solar panels, like what we did 10 or 15 days ago to Indian communities, indigenous communities in Crucito, in Guantaragua, in Baupés. And these are very, very strong messages. And I would like to conclude, Marisol, by saying that we as a country have also to be aware that social transformation requires to give a largest coverage to the whole country, social coverage. And we are getting to the most vulnerable population, showing them that we can all contribute to reduce our individual carbon footprint. So this gives consistency, a general consistency in a road towards net zero. Well, we don't have a lot of time, but we inaugurated with you in Medellin a center for the fourth industrial revolution 3 years ago, and technological transformation, digital transformation was very present in your agenda. Yes, in 30 seconds.
We propose to reach 70% of coverage in August with a high-speed train with mobile coverage, and we've already reached that figure in cities, and we already reached 60% in rural areas. Then technological businesses with added value of green activities. We've incentivized these companies, and we already have 2 startups and a third one with plug-in in the following months. And you know, David Beles is Colombian, but we talk a lot about Brazil, but he's a great regional promoter. And my last message is the double grades in talents. We will have trained 100,000 programmers, and this is the most important talents we are developing. And yes, you have a Peruvian wife, of course, but Vice President, I would like to get back to you on social inclusion. We are going through such great challenges. The most vulnerable communities are the ones that end up being most affected, and in your ministry, you have social development and social inclusion. What are the main strategies of the Peruvian government to go forward with regards to social inclusion and to beat poverty? Thank you, Marisol. Before answering your question, I would like to reiterate to the business community that Peru is trustable with regards to investment, especially with regards to natural gas in our region. And in the Cuna region, frontier with Bolivia, we have lithium, and we can generate an industry that doesn't damage the environment. And we can impulse making cars with lithium and also with oil and we won't have to use oil that contaminates so much our environment. So please come to Peru, and because we have ecological rules, and you may invest in agriculture, and we can feed the world thanks to that. Now, Marisol, getting back to your question, Peru was not the worst affected by the pandemic. I think the whole world, Latin America and the whole world were affected. And we've started governing 9 months ago, so we're still taking small steps as babies. But the right wing in the country does not want to acknowledge the legitimate triumph of President Pedro Castillo in our elections of June 30th last year. And since the President and I swore to serve the Peruvian people, we have not been able to govern in peace. But even though through such a challenging situation, we were firm, and as a friend Duque says, we are resilient, and we face such daily attacks, and we go forward. And in that sense, President Pedro Castillo has set policies towards the most vulnerable population in our country, because pandemic has taken us 10 points lower with regards to development and quality of life and standard of living. And this has affected 30% of the population in Peru. And I'm talking about poor and extreme poor. So from the Ministry of Development and Social Inclusion that I lead, since we got into a position, we created the Yanapa Peru initiative. It's an ambitious support that's covered almost 50% of the Peruvian population. 13.5 million individuals in Peru have received the Yanapa Peru. And also the Aliguarna program. Aliguarna means strong man. We attend over 4 million students between of primary and secondary school. Secondary right for now in the forest area, but we are going forward so that at the end of this half year we can reach the whole secondary education by supporting food for students in the country. And since we saw that this is efficient, we have been also asked to bring meat to vulnerable populations. Consequently, Marisol, yes, we don't have much time left, right? Well, in Ollas Comunes, we attended over 243,000 individuals in a vulnerable situation. But Marisol, I would like to focus on this beautiful program among the 7 programs administered by the Ministry of Development and Social Inclusion. It's a program called País, country, and its action is PIAs. What are the PIAs? Well, the Peruvian forest is quite dense, and through these PIAs that are boats, we transport the services of the state throughout all the native communities. And I'm talking about the Amazon River area. We bring vaccines, health, and the program against against violence against women. We also bring them the banks so that they can get their subsidies paid. And we also support the sisters of native communities. So we have these pias, these boats that can sail throughout the rivers, even in the most dense forest. And where pias can't reach, then we bring planes. And I'm talking about the regions that were most excluded from the state support. So we have these boats and small planes, but we also have 457 tambos, and they do the same service as these boats on the Amazon River or the plains. They also bring services of the state to give quality of life to our brothers and sisters. And this is what President Pedro Castilla has set up to service the Peruvian population. Thank you, Marisol. Thank you, Vice President. There's one topic that hasn't been mentioned and which is quite important: migration fluxes. The President Abinader has mentioned the flows that are so important for all Latin America, and it is important to attend the causes, to analyze the causes of migration. And a global shaper talked to me yesterday, and he asked me to give him 1 minute, Alejandro, just 1 minute, so he could make a comment. Please identify yourself and please give us your testimony. Hello, good afternoon. I'm Alejandro Dali. I'm a displaced migrant in Colombia since 9 years and a global shaper of Bogota. President, you've implemented excellent measures to welcome Venezuelan migrants, not just in Colombia, but it was an example for the region and for the world. What would you recommend other countries in the region to keep on implementing a migration agenda for Venezuelan migrants throughout the world? Well, first of all, thank you for your question and for your comment and for telling us about your experience, which actually touches me to the heart. I would like to start by saying the following. The world needs to forget about the two awful ways of facing migration. The first awful way is xenophobia. In many parts of the world, the migrant is received with stigma and aggressiveness. And then the second negative element is indifference. The migrant arrives and is left alone without any support. From the first day of my government, and I said it in my campaign, I wanted to stop both things, and I wanted to set up a status of temporary reception in Colombia. And I was told that it was not popular, but I thought that when we're talking about people who are fighting for their lives, popularity doesn't matter anymore. What matters is human considerations. And with this status, my head of department is here, and she's been with me every day with Francisco Espinosa and the Colombian government. We're going to give 1 million cards of temporary status for migrants, and this is historic. And and we will give them in a month. And there's the biometrics and registry. Thanks to registries and biometrics, we will be able to give another 800,000 cards. And we always heard that it would take employment from Colombians. But even with this status, we have reduced unemployment, and especially we have reduced informal employments, and we have increased the access to housing, and it goes and it has eradicated this indifference. But also governors and mayors, the whole society of Colombia has shown a great solidarity, and I will keep my commitment firmly. But I would also like to take this opportunity to say here that we cannot be indifferent in front of this humanitarian tragedy, which is the dictatorship of Nicolás Maduro. We need to keep on fighting this until Venezuela gets back to democracy. We need to be solidar with migrants, and we need to defend democracy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear President, dear Mrs. Vice President. We have gotten a few minutes beyond time, but it was a very rich conversation, and I hope that all leaders from Latin America, from all sectors, can agree with each other in spite of local divergences and in spite of the differences between our countries. I hope that we can reach a long-term agenda that will lead us to sustainable and inclusive development in Latin America. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marisol.